Sometimes the world revolves around a person, sometimes around a family, and everyone tries to make sense of this world and take pleasure from it. My family and I lived not far from the city, on our own farm that was inherited from me by my parents. For over 15 years, my wife Ruby and I raised our son George, and our daughter Kristen. I was mainly in charge of agricultural affairs, while my wife preferred to be something else. He changed hobbies from time to time, and recently she took up making rag dolls and little cardboard houses for them. When he assembled the collection, he came up with the idea that those objects, they could generate profits. I helped her to get in touch with some vendors in the city, to whom you could send your crafts. Ruby enjoyed this activity. It did not occupy him much time and provided a break from daily work. I was glad that I'd found hobby again. That will excite her. Just a few months before that, I wasn't busy with anything in particular, just managing the house and helping me from time to time with agricultural tasks. During those summer days, he finally started going to the city on his own to devote himself to his unique business. The children, taking advantage of their holidays, they spent most of their time with their friends. But Ruby and I were getting ready to send them to camp, as we did every summer. Once, I came back from the field and noticed that Ruby was in a rather high mood. She even made our favorite dish with the kids. And I was walking around the kitchen with my headphones on, preparing other snacks. My darling is having a nice day today. I walked up to her and hugged her around the waist, while she was with her back to the stove, stirring something. Surprised, she was a little startled. "Michael, why are you doing this?" He took off his headphones. "Why are you approaching like this?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I just saw you beaming with happiness." I bent down to kiss her, but for some reason, he hesitated and pushed me with his hand. "Michael, no, I can't do this right now. Do you see how busy I am? I don't understand it. Since when do you not enjoy kissing me?" I found his behavior a little strange, and I came closer again. "What makes you think that? I'm just a little busy. Wait a little. Sit down. Do you want to try what I did?" Ruby tried to rectify the situation that she had created herself and avoided answering gently. I did not insist and sat at the table waiting for the delicacy. She placed a bowl on the table, full of chopped ingredients that looked like a salad. He handed me a fork and told me to try it. The taste seemed somewhat unusual to me. In addition to vegetables, glass of meat and peas. But there was something else, an element that I could not discern, which gave the dish a whole new flavor. "What is this?" "Quite delicious," I asked the eyeing. "Oh, it's a new recipe. One of my clients decided to share it with me. For a special order I made for him. I decided to try it. Kids should like it too." "Well, that's it." She took the bowl from me when I wanted to keep eating. "This is for dinner. I just let you try it." I was pleasantly impressed, so I hugged my wife and went out. I had something to do, and I didn't want to leave them for later. Besides, this way I could kill time and wait for dinner. The kids were excited about the salad too. But Reuben did not reveal the secret ingredient that enriched her. All he promised was that this kind of dishes, they would appear more often at his table. The next day, I was planning to go to work again, while my wife had to carry a new batch, from toys to one of the shops. I noticed that while preparing, he started to get a little more dressed up. I can't say that it caused me suspicion, but his behavior seemed somewhat strange. "You look like you're going to a celebration," I said to him as I approached from behind, while she was in front of the mirror examining herself. "No," he turned to me. "I just decided to change my style a little bit. I've been walking like a mouse, I scream all the time. I am now a businesswoman, so I want a C-cord. What do you think?" "Nothing. You look great." Ruby kept getting ready, and I went about my business. The next few days passed as usual, but with some difference. Ruby had really transformed, and when we sent the kids to camp, he began to behave completely differently. I didn't see anything wrong with that. On the contrary, I even liked how he had changed. Outwardly, she seemed more feminine. She changed her wardrobe, her hairstyle. She even started wearing perfume much more often. She didn't know exactly what had driven her to do this, but I liked him. However, later I realized that when the night came, and naturally I demanded affection from her as my wife, she found more and more reasons to avoid intimacy. Sometimes I was tired. Other times I had a headache, or she needed to wake up early in the morning. Not understanding what was wrong with him, I even suspected that she had another man. It hurt me in the soul and in the pride. And when he rejected me once more, I couldn't stand it and had an honest conversation with her. Ruby, tell me the truth. Why are you acting like this to me? Is there anyone else? I turned on the bedside table light to be able to see his face better. When we got into bed, what? She asked me, puzzled. What are you talking about? What nonsense? Of course, there is no one else for me. Then explain your behavior to me. Why can't I spend time with my wife properly? Accordingly, he sat down. So, for you, this is just a duty. The same every day. You in the field, me in the kitchen, and at night in bed. Haven't you tired of this yourself? Haven't you considered that maybe I want something more? Any variety? For example, when we went to the cinema together, or we just went on vacation. No, nothing like that. Just a mundane routine. Her outburst of going to was unexpected for me, because something like this has never been allowed before. And now, something inside of me suggested to me that his trips to the city, she was being influenced in this way. He still did not know who he had met there, or who had put those ideas into him. But I was determined to bring her back to reality. Whatever fantasy had been formed there, I do not understand. What did you say? Didn't you like our life before? In the peace and quiet, far away from the city center. Why did you change your mind in a tan drastic way? Yes, I liked it at first, but then it started to bore me. Haven't you noticed that I'm getting heavy? I didn't feel like a woman anymore. And when I came back to visit the city, I not only visited her, I was there alone, without the burden that keeps me here. I remembered how wonderful it is to see you well and enjoy life. So for you, me and the kids are just a burden. I was disappointed with his response. I never thought I would hear something like that from her. His words hurt me deeply. I got out of bed and headed for the door. Ruby mumbled something behind me, but I didn't listen anymore. I had heard enough. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a drink. It was late and I needed to get up early, as always in the morning. But the dream was far from me. I sat at the table with a glass in my hand, lost in my thoughts, contemplating what might have caused such a change in my wife. She came down after me. I heard his soft footsteps in the hallway, but I didn't turn around. I didn't even want to see her. However, she was already sitting there in front of me at the table. Michael, listen. Forgive me. I got excited. I didn't mean that, but you said it. You respond without raising your head. But seriously, you have to understand me. I don't want to. I can't do this anymore. I need something new. You know, one of the clients offered me to give me in the city for a few days. We became friends. He has an empty apartment, and I could stay there. What? I couldn't stand it and got up from the table. Now he was looking at her like she was a spoiled teenage girl, that he decided to defy his parents. How do you even think about something like that? Did you really think I would accept something like that? Bob's your uncle. I've had enough. Fucking businesswoman. No more shops. I went to another room. His words made me so angry that I decided to put an end to his business once and for all. I didn't know why I reacted so drastically, but my anger at that moment was strong enough, and I started putting all her creations in a bag. Ruby kept me feeling my mood, understanding that I could do something terrible. When he saw me destroying his job, he started screaming at me, grabbing my hands, trying to snatch the bag from me, cursing at me all the time. But I did not give in to their pleas. I firmly believed that if there were no toys, there would be no trips to the city. And as a result, she would calm down, and I would return to normal life, getting all those bad thoughts out of his head. After all, during all these years, I tried to do it for her. When we got married, she herself talked about wanting to live far away from all this worldly bustle, where no one will bother us. But what made her change? I couldn't believe Ruby was just listening to a friend, and his Kumbira to his advice. Deep down, I understood that it wasn't everything. And according to my wife's reaction, I was sure of my right. Our argument ended with me taking the bag outside, and I put everything in a huge garbage can. Ruby chased me all the way, cursing me with all kinds of offensive words. And when I tried to take the lighter out of my pocket, and she realized that she was going to learn fire from him, he stood in front of the container, without giving me a chance to complete my plan. No, I won't let you. This is my life. You fucking brute. Why are you doing this to me? I screamed. I put the lighter down and was going back in. Ruby stayed outside and kept insulting me. It was the biggest fight of all our years together, and it hurt a lot, but I couldn't let her leave the family. He knew someone was whispering bad thoughts to him, and if he left his activity and returned to domestic work, those crazy ideas would soon leave his clouded mind. I went to bed without waiting for my wife. In a few minutes, I heard her enter the house again, shouting something to herself, then falling down and just looking at something, probably putting his job in its place. I don't remember when I fell asleep. Maybe I just got exhausted from the argument and passed out. But when I woke up in the morning, I noticed that my wife was not in bed. As I was leaving the bedroom, I called her name, but no one answered me. I started looking around, remembering the discussion yesterday. Looking in his workshop, I didn't see anything new. He hadn't even put his old toys back. But what was he doing here at night? I went to check more and noticed that some of his stuff was missing. Did he get so offended with me that he decided to leave in the end? But I just wanted the best. Upon realizing that Ruby had left the house, my spirit has given so much that I couldn't even muster up the strength to go to work. And now I had another task. I needed to find Ruby and bring her back home, even if I had to do it by force. No one in my family had ever done such things, and I wasn't going to change the traditions. He firmly believed that the family should always be together, and that nothing should interfere with that. But I didn't know where to look for her at that moment. However, it had to start somewhere. So I went to the city to visit some shops, the ones that Ruby worked with. When I entered the first two, they didn't tell me anything about my wife. They hadn't visited her in a month, and they even considered cutting ties with her. Then I walked into a toy store, hoping they could help me, but the seller was busy with another customer. So, while I was waiting, I started looking at the shelves. We don't get pieces that Ruby had made recently. Can I help you with something? Finally, the salesman approached me. Yes, I want to talk a little bit about my wife. How long has he been here? Not so long ago. He brought these toys. He pointed to the shelf next to me. And why is that? Did something happen? No, I was just curious about how you're doing with your business. I help him with that myself. Tell me, has he mentioned anything to you about his work? Have you had any new clients? Ruby recently told me that she had some private clients. Oh yeah, do you know? His works have become quite popular. I don't even know why, but people buy them quite often. As for other customers, I know some people he works with, but I don't see how that could help. These have no children. They just admire his talent. Then the salesman told me in detail. How did he know met by chance right in his shop? And then he saw them at the cafe across the street when they were dating. But I'd also heard that these people were very rich, and they had their own quirks. And I didn't understand why they needed Ruby, although he assumed they had decided to start their own business. And now they wanted to use my wife as a kind of factory. But she also said that there were negative rumors about these people, even though they had a high social position. However, I asked him for his address, but he didn't have it. He just explained to me with words where approximately they could be found. I didn't waste any more time and headed in the indicated direction. I realized that this was just one possible path to find Ruby, and it was quite possible that he was somewhere else. But the search had to start somewhere. So I went out with the hope that these people would go out of their way to help me and tell me where my wife might be. When I arrived, I noticed that behind a high fence of Regilla, my wife's car was parked, so she was definitely there. I looked carefully at the mansion, and I realized that the people who live here are very rich. As I approached the door, I pressed the button. Immediately, a guard came out to me, and he asked me what I wanted. When I explained, he just laughed, but then threatened to call the police, since I was sure Ruby was in the house. Then the guard told me that the police would not help me. No way. That Ruby had agreed to work as a toy for the owner, and advised me to leave the area. I walked away from the door, realizing that at that moment, there was nothing I could do. However, I stayed in the car for a while, looking in that direction, hoping to see Ruby. But time passed, and his empty car was still parked. Then I saw a huge black car approaching the gates, and stopping outside. A security guard approached, and he whispered something through the open window. Later, the car left, and the guard came towards me. I understood that he was not coming just to chat, so I immediately accelerated and headed for the adjacent street. I had to run away at that moment, but I wasn't going to leave it that easy. I still went to the police station and explained my suspicion that my wife might be being held against her will. The officer listened to me carefully, but initially he was reluctant to take my statement. The officer listened to me carefully, but initially he was reluctant to take my statement. However, I insisted a lot, and after long persuasions, he finally agreed to send a patrol there to investigate the situation. However, when we returned to the house, there was no sign of Ruby's car. The officer approached the guard, and she talked to him for a few minutes. Then he came back to me and told me that no one there. I had heard about my wife, and the car I saw was probably just a similar one. At that moment, I felt that everything was lost. Besides, I couldn't even call her, since Ruby left her phone at home. Realizing that there was nothing I could do, at that moment I was coming home, in the hope that she had come to her senses and decided to return. But he wasn't at home either. I waited until late at night, but Ruby didn't show up. The next day, I was going back to the city. I was hoping I'd still get lucky, and he'll find my wife, visit all the shops she used to work with again. And I even drove up to the well-to-do, where I saw his car the day before. But it all turned out to be useless. With the passage of time, I fell hungry, and I decided to have something to eat in a cafe. Meeting me at a secluded table, I ordered a burger and coffee, although at that moment I really wanted a drink. As I continued my modest meal, I accidentally overheard a conversation between two women, probably friends. They were talking about one of their husbands, who first went to a party and then disappeared. The one who was his wife told her friend that he had hired a private detective, praised him, saying the case was moving forward. I put down the hamburger and walked over to his table. Sorry, ladies. I accidentally overheard their conversation. Which detective were you talking about? Or you're from another century? One of them looked me up and down. Didn't you know that all the big problems, they can be solved through a detective? I didn't want to look like a complete redneck, so I stiffened up and continued my inquiry. I knew I couldn't decide on the option. I can join you. One of them moved away, and I sat down to make the conversation easier. I briefly shared with you my situation, and I asked for the detective's contact information, since they were praising him. One of them said that he was just a specialist in these matters, and besides, their services were not very expensive. Thanking the girls, I would turn my table, and now I had a concrete hope. After that, the farm came back, where he planned to get the necessary amount. But as they say, problems never come alone. When I walked into the living room and opened the safe hidden behind the books in the closet, I found it completely empty. Damn, why didn't I think to check it out right away? Now it turns out that my wife not only left me, but he also stole from me. Damn, now I had another reason to find her as soon as possible. But now he was not going to be tender and affectionate with her. I realized that she had decided to leave me, and, most likely, now I was in bed with that stupid guy from the well-to-do house. However, I needed money, and I started thinking about where to get it in the near future. I didn't want to mortgage the farm to take out a bank loan. Ruby was definitely not worth me losing my home over this. But he had a tractor that he rarely used, and it was in good condition. I started calling acquaintances who were farmers, and he offered them the equipment. One of them accepted and had the necessary sum. After receiving the money, I hoped it would be enough. Praying, luckily in my mind, I dialed the detective's number. I would suggest meeting up the next day and bring a picture of my wife. I did not object and prepared everything necessary. The next day, I was in his office, and I had to wait a bit since I had another client. Well, I've heard about these people, he said after hearing my story. You did the right thing by not getting into it on your own. This man, Mr. Warren, he looks pretty decent in appearance, but in reality, he is a criminal. Unfortunately, we have not been able to prove his involvement in the criminal world. You understand, many simply let themselves be bought by him, including the police. After his words, I felt a lump of disappointment in my throat, and I started to think that the case was useless and unlikely to yield results. But the detective continued. I can take this case. It's starting to look like a kidnapping, and if I can prove his guilt, I'll be more than happy. You see, I've been chasing him for a long time. The detective gave me a mysterious look. This gave me a glimmer of hope, and I gave up my despair. After paying the detective the initial fee, I left his office. He advised me to stay at home and continue with my usual activities. while waiting for the results. But I couldn't just sit around waiting. I wanted to solve it myself. However, I realized that I had already been seen in that house. And if these people were as dangerous as the detective said, they could either end well for me, rent another car to have the opportunity to observe the house myself. I even bought a baseball cap that I could partially hide my face. And when I was ready, that house would come back. Only this time, he shows up to observe. Soon I would see Black Car again come into the house. Then via a middle-aged man with an expensive suit get out of it, followed by Ruby. I didn't even recognize her at first. She was dressed in beautiful clothes that fit her body. He was wearing a sizable necklace, and he was just glowing, happily chatting with that man. Annoyance and anger became my main emotions again. Now I understood that Ruby had exchanged me for a rich man. She chose to leave her husband and children for branded clothes and trinkets. Now I even despised her for betraying me. At least I could have confessed honestly. But no, he decided to play the fool, pretending to be a good wife, just in case things didn't work out with that guy, and have a place to come back to. These thoughts made my blood run wild, and I was ready to go rump her there in spite of everything. I was just distracted by a phone call. It was the detective. I told you to stay still. I'll take care of this. 'Cause damn, it's taking over right under their noses. He asked with an angry tone. What? But how? Have you forgotten who I work for? Get out there, or I'll have to take you out. I hung up and left. Not just because the detective told me to, but because momentarily I felt that I no longer wanted to get my wife back. He just betrayed me, annulling all the years of our life together. I was feeling crushed and just came back home with the intention of drowning my sorrows. Luckily, the kids weren't home yet, and they knew nothing of their mother's antics. I was awakened by a loud knock on the door. When I opened my eyes and tried to get up, I could barely. They even put in Bailey and immediately fell back on the sofa. I tried to remember the recent events, and you see bottles of whiskey on the table, one of which still had some alcohol in it. The knock on the door continued, and despite the dizziness, I went to open it. The detective was there. He looked at me puzzled. I couldn't reach you. I decided to come, he said as he entered the house. Ayu, what are you doing to yourself? That's none of your business, I replied sharply. But apparently, the detective had no intention of leaving me alone. He led me to the kitchen and made a strong coffee, finding everything I needed in the pantry. And when my conscience cleared up a little, he kept talking about why he came to see me. She found out that Ruby wasn't just dating this Warren. She was somehow his little toy, in an intimate sense. He signed a contract with him, in which I would provide you with certain services, and he would pay her well for it. But I also couldn't tell anyone about it. She was introduced to him by his sister, who by chance met Ruby at a toy store. She was a bit of a pervert herself, and he was looking for attractive girls with good physique for his brother. That's how he caught Ruby. But when I expressed to the detective that I didn't want her back anymore, he shared more information with me. Turns out Ruby wasn't his first victim, and several people who got involved with him. They just disappeared without a trace, or their bodies were found in a ditch, completely beaten and mutilated. But before, they were mainly women of easy virtue, and they couldn't prove Warren's involvement. Now the detective had a lead, and I was hoping that this time I could finally catch him. Even followed him and found that he spent most of his twisted pleasures in a separate house outside the city. I started asking to go there with the detective. Somehow, I wanted to see it with my own eyes and settle accounts with him, although I still didn't know how. The detective understood my feelings, but he still advised me not to go there. However, I was firm. Then he mentioned that he knew when it was likely. Let them fuck out there with another victim. Made me drink 2 more cups of strong coffee, for Sabrio completely, but he wouldn't let me drive. We went in his car. He was full of determination to go rumper in that house and face the scoundrel that not only corrupted my wife, but also to other girls. Despite my age, he maintained a good physical condition, and I was confident in my abilities. We arrived at a rather discreet house, but from a distance we noticed several guards around her. The detective parked a little further away, and the darkness that would be over us. It helped us to go unnoticed. He was physically agile like me, and we managed to incapacitate the guards one by one. I saw that they were strong and armed, but my anger and the pain of betrayal gave me strength. Once the entrance to the house was cleared, we were approaching the door who turned out to be uninsured. It was dark in the hallway, but from one of the distant rooms of this house. Single story. We hear moans, as if someone was being beaten. When he pays attention, I recognized my wife's voice. He accepted such a perversion for money. The thought has made me, but going back was no longer an option, so the detective and I moved on. The detective prepared his weapon and kicked the door of the room where the noises were coming from. I followed him and was stunned by what I saw. There, kneeling and tied to a pole, there was Ruby, but it wasn't just that horrified me. When I looked around the room, it looked like a torture room, although it was furnished with carpets, and he had a soft bed against the back wall. Guarin Alvernos. He visibly panicked, and he immediately called the guards. But no one came to his aid, and I, like an enraged beast, I threw myself at him, knocking him to the ground. I didn't hold back, releasing all the negativity that I had accumulated inside of me, hitting him over and over again, until his face became in a bloody mess. Only then did the detective feel me walking away, telling me that I already had enough evidence, and that it was time to put this man behind bars. I stepped back a little and turned to Ruby. While I was dealing with Guarin, the detective had untied her. She was sitting on the floor, sobbing, asking why he had broken in again and ruined his life. I was pretty drunk, and he stumbled from time to time. Then, have I ruined everything for you? Was it terrible for you? I asked in response. You? Just you? Is this what you wanted? Is this who you are? Did you decide to trade me and them for this? Them? I took a small photo out of my pocket, showing the children hugging her. Ruby was silent, and with trembling hands he held up the picture. He looked at her for a minute, like I was in shock. Meanwhile, I turned to the detective, that I was putting the cuffs on Guarin, in a pipe, to ask him what would happen next. While I was talking to him, Ruby suddenly regained her composure and ran out into the street, taking the photo with him. The detective and I exchanged glances, and then he ordered us to catch up with her. He was right, because as soon as we crossed the threshold, we saw Ruby getting into Guarin's car, starting the engine, but we didn't manage to reach it. Ruby stepped on the gas pedal, and he sped off. Of course, we immediately went to the detective's car, and we drove in the same direction as my wife. On the way, he got in touch with his associates, and he called for backup for that house. I was sure we would catch up to Ruby before he did something reckless. But after a while, we saw a traffic accident later on in the city, and the police and the paramedics. They were already at the place. The car that Ruby had been in, that now it was all dented. We recognized him immediately. The detective approached one of the policemen, that he was obviously in charge, and I followed him. After a brief interrogation, the policeman told us she was probably a prostitute, judging by his clothes. She got into the oncoming lane while intoxicated and crashed into a truck. The truck driver got away with some bruises, but the girl did not survive. That's what the policeman told us. Then the detective explained the situation to him, and they let me get close to the corpse. Ruby was already taken care of on a stretcher, completely covered with a white sheet. I lifted her up slightly, and I saw that his face was not only covered with blood, but also from the ugrimas, and that perhaps the accident was not only caused because of his state of hebridity, but also because of the fact that her tears, they prevented him from seeing anything. Was it now when he realized of what he had to give up for their own pleasures? I was going back to the policeman, and I confirmed that she was my wife. And then he handed me a photograph, saying that she was tightly held between Ruby's fingers. And then I wondered, is it necessary to die to realize his guilt and to be absolved from all sins? Some time after, when the kids came back from camp, did I have to tell you about your mother's death? He didn't want to ruin his time away, so I waited until they got home. But I didn't tell them what the real cause was of the accident, nor what she had been doing before that. They used to love their mother, and I didn't want to deprive them of that feeling. Since then, I have taught them even more. That family is the most important thing no matter what. And sometimes I would tell them about the dangers that might be waiting for them in the future, so they wouldn't fall into the hands of someone like Guarin. Here is our second story. In this video, enjoy it. I've always liked coming home after from work to this cozy house with several rooms. a spacious courtyard, and even some auxiliary buildings. There were several old trees growing in the yard. Their wide glasses invited to sit under them. After a long day at work, my wife Kathleen and we chose this house for us about 20 years ago, right after our marriage. At that time, we were already captivated because of its vegetation and appearance. Inside, we made a lot of ourselves. We even remodeled a couple of walls to make life more comfortable. And we were also hoping to have several children. Kathleen has always loved children. She herself grew up in a large family, and I wanted to have as many children as possible. But the years passed. We had two wonderful children, Tim, our son, and Anna, our daughter. Then Kathleen became ill in such a way that I couldn't have any more children. It was very sad news for her, and I supported her the best I could. Eventually, he felt better, and we made do with what we had, pouring all our love into our two little ones. Years passed. Kathleen took it upon herself to create the children and to keep order at home. I didn't force her to work. He understood the difficult. It could be the housework. I love my wife very much, and I didn't want her to get tired. I managed to secure a good position at work, enough to support my family, without anyone missing anything. And now, after 20 years, our family began to downsize slowly. When Tim went to another state to study at the university, and Anna was also getting ready to leave the family nest, she found a wonderful guy, David, and his relationship was heading towards marriage. I couldn't help but notice that Kathleen was getting more and more sad. With time, I understood why she was not so cheerful. Our son had already left us, and soon our daughter too. I was going to leave the nest. I wanted to somehow dispel his sadness. So I thought I'd organize a trip, a few days to a resort. But after sailing from many options on different websites, I still couldn't choose something really valuable. Are you looking for something? My daughter came up unexpectedly one afternoon when I was looking again. Yes, I wanted to take Mom somewhere nice, but it seems that I can't choose anything. Yes, I want to take Mom somewhere nice, but it seems that I can't choose anything. Is it necessary for you to go somewhere full of people? She noticed the list of resorts that I had open. Well, I want you to relax a little. He's been spending a lot of time at home lately, without going out anywhere. Dad, you can have a good time anywhere. And I think he doesn't need the company of chatty, jolly old men. I think he just misses family. You and I hardly live here anymore. Yes, I understand you. But I already suggested that he visit his relatives. For some reason, he doesn't want to. No, Dad. Forgive me, but I've noticed that you and Mom, they're not as close as they used to be. Maybe that's what she needs. Go somewhere with her, where the two of you can be alone, where no one interrupts them remembering the past years. After all, you're not so old, as if to forget everything. Besides, my wedding is in 3 months. You will have plenty of time to relax and gather strength before the celebration. I felt that my daughter's words, they had a certain sense, and I agreed with his suggestion. He even suggested some places, the ones Kathleen and I could go to. At the end of the afternoon, I had already made a decision. When my wife came back from the neighbor's house, I was getting ready to propose something to him. I didn't tell him the real reason for my decision, and I just told her I had a present for her, a cottage by the lake. She asked, slightly surprised, "But why? It's not just a cabin. It is the Cato Lake, one of the most beautiful lakes. We'll rent a secluded cabin there. We'll go by boat, but it's so far away. It's almost a whole day's journey. And why did you decide to organize all this?" His displeasure was unexpected for me, and I was a little surprised. "Kathleen, come on. Why? I just wanted to organize a little getaway for the two of us. It's been so long since we've been going anywhere together. Just don't say you didn't like it." If I liked, Kathleen sat down on the sofa. But I just really don't feel like going anywhere. And our daughter's celebration is coming up soon. We have to get ready and all that. I moved closer to my wife and put my arms around her. I couldn't believe I had to convince her to go somewhere, considering that he had always loved all kinds of travel. But in the last 6 months, something seemed to have changed in her. For a while we chatted, and finally Kathleen agreed to this little break. We left the house in charge of our daughter and future Lerno, who promised to visit and take care of her often. We left in our own car, because that way we could go to other places at our leisure. and we could make stops whenever we wanted. We had to get to our destination before dark. As we went on after another turn, we realized that we had slightly lost our way. Stopping at the side, I carefully studied the map again, trying to figure out exactly where we were. At that moment, Kathleen decided to express her opinion. He even started telling me off, insisting that this whole trip, it had been a silly idea from the beginning. I didn't want to argue with her or claim that I was right anyway, and that I would soon find a route. I remembered walking past a gas station with a roadside cafe recently, and I suggested we go back there to clarify the directions and take a little break. The interior of the cafe was modestly decorated, even something old-fashioned. However, the girl behind the counter was quite friendly, and he immediately offered us coffee and cake. Sorry, I wanted to ask you again about this place. I showed him the place marked on the map. I was told that this is a very nice place to relax, but we could not find the indicated path here. Oh, the girl smiled. That road overflowed almost a year ago, during a strong hurricane. But don't worry, the place there is really nice, and I can tell you how to get there without making a big detour. Now I understood why we had gotten lost a little earlier, and I listened intently while the waitress told us. On another recently used path that wasn't on the map yet, making sure we would reach our destination sooner. Of it getting dark, when we finished the cake, a man unexpectedly approached us. About 40 years old, quite robust, dressed in clothes in Silla de Campo, a baseball cap and dark sunglasses. He smiled, showing some gold teeth. Then he started talking to us. I heard that they want to visit one of the most mysterious places. Sorry, I heard you. I'm James. If you want, I can show you how to get there. I know these places well, so I can help them not to get lost. Thanks, but we were already given directions, I replied. I didn't really want to start a conversation with him, since his appearance did not inspire much confidence in me. Don't worry about it. I was a forest ranger. I did not take distrust. I often had to help lost sheep. He looked at my wife, which only made me more convinced that it was better not getting involved with him. Why not? Leave what he shows us, Kathleen interjected. If not, we'll end up going around again. He looked at me sarcastically. Then he looked at James again. I'm Kathleen, and this is my husband, Chris. Sorry, we've had a very difficult day. That's fine. I understand, James replied. Think about it, but not for long, or I'll be leaving soon too. By the way, I'm going in that direction. The man got up, took his drink from the counter, and he went out into the street. Kathleen elbowed me in the arm, whispering that we should trust a little more in people and accept their help. I was a little tired after a whole day of traveling, and although I still had some reservations, I agreed with my wife. Soon, we were riding in a small van, the driver showing us the way. As we veer off the main road, we walked along a barely visible dirt road, sorting through thickets and trees that sometimes completely blocked the sky above us. I was even glad I chose this place, watching Kathleen enjoy the surroundings, and he even praised me a little later. After just over an hour, the truck ahead stopped. My wife and I also got out of the car. I looked around, but I didn't see any cabins yet. There was only a dense forest around us. James got out of his car and walked over to us. They will have to drive a few hundred meters more on this road. He pointed towards the 2 tracks barely visible in the grass. You will see his cabin there. There's a trail from there to the lake, and there's a canoe by the shore, so you can go for a paddle. But I must move on, so here we parted ways. I thanked him for his help, and my wife and I, we went back to our car. When James left, we are heading towards the direction you indicated. We arrived very quickly, but we decided not to go to the lake that night. It was already starting to get dark, so my wife and I stayed to explore instead. Upon entering the cabin, we explored the whole space. Kathleen then made a light dinner, while I was taking out the alcoholic drinks that he had brought for us. When we settled down on the cozy sofa, my wife decided to call our daughter to tell you about our accommodation. Strange, there is no signal here, he said, looking at his phone, and then lifting it higher. As I was walking around the room, maybe it's intentionally designed this way, so that people can relax. Instead of being glued to the phone, I suggested, what if something happens? What if we need to make a call? No, I don't like this. Chris, you really went over the details. Before you came here? Kathleen grunted again. However, I didn't let her start another discussion. I found the right words to calm her down. After about 10 minutes of conversation, finally it was given, but he made me promise that we wouldn't stay. A long time there. Later that night, when it was already completely dark, and my wife and I were totally focused on each other on the fur rug, in front of the fireplace, someone knocked on the door. Kathleen immediately wrapped herself in a blanket, and she looked at me scared. Who could it be? Especially at this hour. We were supposed to be alone here. He said anxiously, "Relax. I want to see who is interrupting our relaxation. Maybe it's just a local guard. Checking the security." I calmed her down, putting on my pants and a shirt. I was reluctantly heading towards the door. I didn't like this visitor anymore, since I had become quite relaxed, and I didn't want to see anyone else. To the fence at the entrance. Look out the side window. But it was dark outside, and the lamp on the street. Obviously it wasn't working, so I only saw the shadow of one person, just in case the fireplace came back. And I took one of the iron hooks, before proceeding to open the door. It was James. I was surprised I didn't recognize him earlier. "Ah, I see they have already settled in," he said. "Yes. What are you doing here?" Ask in response. "Something happened on my way back. My car had some problems. Setting it at night is not very pleasant. And besides, there's no phone signal in this place. So I thought I'd ask if I could stay here." His request seemed very strange to me. Was our cabin the only place nearby? The situation was beginning to look suspicious to me. I didn't know this person, and I realized that it could be someone dangerous. But while I was thinking about my answer, Kathleen came out in a robe and wrapped in a blanket. "Oh, is it you again?" He said. "I'm sorry. I really didn't want to bother you. But I'm in a situation." "Yes, I heard. Chris, why can't we help this person? He showed us the way." "Don't be so harsh. Can we help you?" "He showed us the way. Don't be so harsh." "James, come on in. If you want, we still have some dinner left. We can offer you that." James smiled politely and walked in. I decided to hurry up and see what happened next. Maybe I was wrong, and James might be a friendly person after all. However, I did not hide the bar far away. I left her near the door. The rest of the evening, the three of us spent together. Kathleen offered him dinner, but he turned it down. They talked about various things while we were drinking wine. After a while, while watching this strange, I began to think that my initial impression of him, I could have been wrong. James shared some of his adventures that he had lived in these places. But with the passage of time, it was time to go to sleep. We assigned a place to our guest in the room, and we went to the room. "What are you doing now?" My wife asked me when she saw me setting up a chair against the door of our room. "It's just a preventive measure. Don't be like that. And if I need to go out in the middle of the night, to the bathroom, for example, do you expect me to dismantle your barricades in the middle of the night?" Kathleen grunted again, but this time I didn't listen to her and left everything as it was. I wanted to sleep, and I also wanted our sleep to be safe. For a while, I kept listening. I couldn't hear James from the living room, and thinking that he had already fallen asleep, I also turned off the light, hugging my wife's body. I woke up because I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It wasn't the full moon shining through the window, so I was able to look around without turning on a light bulb. Kathleen wasn't in bed, and I assumed she was up, for the same reason as me. It came out so quietly that I didn't even see it today. I didn't stay waiting for him to come back to bed, and I went on with my thing. On returning, I noticed that the night light was on in the living room, and someone was moving there. At first, I wondered if James was already going through her stuff, so I peeked into the room. But when I got closer, I heard that I was not alone. I was whispering something with my wife. Strange that they can talk in the middle of the night, I thought, and I was about to enter, but for some reason I stopped and decided to listen to what they were saying. "I still can't believe it's you." "Yeah, dude, when I first saw you, but now." "But how? We can't, can we?" I whisper, "Kathleen, don't worry. He doesn't even know. He didn't notice it then. He won't notice it now." This dialogue seemed suspicious to me, and he took a step towards the room. "What am I not finding out about?" I asked, but then I realized what they were talking about. I guessed it because Kathleen was sitting very close to James in her evening gown, and he had put his arm around her waist and was holding her other hand with his. Seeing how my wife hugged that fat man without shame, I was filled to go instantly. Kathleen Albrum immediately became alarmed and abruptly jumped off the sofa, while James remained sitting, apparently plotting something vile in his head. "Answer me, what's going on here?" I screamed, although I could already see. Kathleen, what does it all mean? Do you know him? No. Chris, you've misunderstood something. We were just talking. Kathleen began to justify herself. Talking? That's what it's called now. I was practically licking you. Exclaim. What? Are you with him? My speech got cut off. It was disgusting to even talk about it out loud. Hey, buddy, he told you. James began. I'm not your friend. And you? How dare you? We let you stay the night. And you? How dare you touch my wife? Get the hell out of here. James took a step towards me, but immediately adopted defensive posture ready to hit him. But Kathleen decided to defend him. He started yelling at me to calm down, telling it to be a dead night, and that it was inhumane to kick someone out like that. But I didn't care. What I saw was enough. And who knows what else they might have been doing if I hadn't woken up. Although now I wasn't even sure about that, because Kathleen had woken up before me. Does he speak? Who the hell are you? I asked James, who was still standing, but ready to fight. What do they want from us? What do you want from my wife? I grabbed the chimney hook. Wait, it's okay. I'll tell you if you want, but you're not going to like it. James replied, extending his open palms towards me, making a gesture for me to calm down. Not James. Kathleen said, her face now expressing horror before what I might discover. I just recognized Kathleen at the cafe and wanted to help. Actually, we've known each other for a long time. I've changed a bit since then, but she still sees it just as well. What are you talking about? I asked my wife. Don't listen to him. He's lying. Nothing happened. I scream, Kathleen. But how? Kathleen, you told me that you loved me, that you would always love me. I agreed to separate then, because I didn't want to get in the way of your happiness. But now that I've seen you again, I can't lose you anymore. Her story impacted me with every word. I could be telling the truth about having had an affair with my wife ever. But on the other hand, why would I join? Just to cause problems for unsuspecting vacationers. Meanwhile, anger and jealousy were mingling inside me, and anger was dominating me. With all my might, I hit James on the head with the iron bar. She screamed in pain and grabbed her temple, but she didn't fall. When Kathleen saw this, she immediately chirped. Then he started yelling at me, accusing me of insanity. Recovering quickly from my first stroke, James started to move towards me, evidently ready to hit back. I even managed to see his reddened eyes before he lunged at me. I hit again, but before I could impact, his body was already flying towards me. We both fell to the ground, and the bar slipped out of my hands. For a moment, I wondered what could find him even, considering how heavy it was. But there was no time to think about that. I had to fight with this idiot. And as he held me with his huge hands, I was trying to find something, anything to hit him with. Feeling my breathing considerably obstructed, I managed to reach the bar. I grabbed it and the key into James' side with all my strength. I screamed in agony like a wild animal. That made him let go of me, and while he was writhing in pain, trying to get the piece of metal out of his body, I managed to roll to the side and started coughing. Then I saw him take out the bar, the blood gushing from the wound, splashing everything around him. Kathleen collapsed on the floor, screaming in fear. As for me, I was pondering what to do next, because staying under the same roof with him wasn't safe. Take him to the hospital, but where is he? We ended up here because of him and in the middle of the night. I doubted I could find my way back, but his subsequent actions guided me. James, still driving away in pain. He lunged at me again, but this time I had less strength, giving me some advantage. In the fight that followed, we started to struggle again, punching us in the face, pushing us against the furniture. After a few minutes, the room looked as if a hurricane had ripped through it. You shouldn't have treated me like that, James said. I just wanted to love her, just be with her. But now it won't belong to anyone if you don't bark at me. Take it. I don't need a whore like that. I answered calmly. By the way, you know that your son is going to marry your daughter. Kathleen didn't admit to you that her daughter Anna is pregnant. It seemed that James didn't expect that from me, and neither did Kathleen. James was confused and even under the knife. Apparently, he did not know that Anna was his daughter, and this news completely upset him. He let go of Kathleen and started pacing back and forth like a madman, looking at the ground. I took advantage of this moment and attacked him. We didn't fight much this time. I don't even remember how miraculously I managed to grab his hand with the knife and twist it But in the next moment, James was already fallen to the ground, and this wound turned out to be fatal. For him, Kathleen remained horrified, unable to even scream out of fear. I was embarrassed and terrified by what was happening. All I had to do was decide how to handle all this in the end. We returned to the cabin, but did not go to sleep. When morning came, we set off on foot to find our way. After a while, we ran into James' car. I grabbed the cables under the steering wheel and tried to pull it off. It turned out to be perfectly fine. If it meant that James didn't know to lie just to get into our cabin. When we got home, our daughter and her fiancé were gone. Maybe they were out somewhere. Kathleen began to ask what would happen next and what to do with James' body. Don't worry about James. Now you have to talk to your daughter and explain to her why she can't marry David. Kathleen sat on the sofa as an entrance. I no longer wanted to talk to her or even see her. I showered, got changed, and then plucked up the courage to go to the police station. I was going to confess everything that happened at the cabin by the lake. And although I understood what the consequences could be for me, I didn't care anymore because my happy life had already been trampled underfoot. But when I arrived, I met an acquaintance, a detective. I talked to him, and he said he could help me. But for that, I would have to say, for the records, that James just barged into our cabin and attacked us in a fit of madness. After a while, the case was closed. My acquaintance helped me, and I was not in danger. But that was the only good result, because in the end, I divorced my wife, Yana, after learning the truth from her mother. He despised her and had a nervous breakdown. Now, I took a couple of weeks off to be with my daughter and help her get back to normal. Kathleen herself wanted to end her life after all that, slitting her wrists in the bathroom, but my early return prevented her from doing so. Although he was angry with her, he did not wish for her death. So I admitted her to a specialized clinic until she recovered. And I think the truth about Anna and David came to them even more that their betrayal shook me. Here is our third story in this video. Enjoy it. Sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't succumbed to the urges. Emotional or the subconscious urges of feelings. Always confident that he was doing everything absolutely right. I didn't realize when fate was placed in deceptions, leading me into the trap of sinful actions. I grew up in a Catholic family where I was taught from childhood to see situations in a rational and always choose the right path. But then I grew up, did my military service, got married, and now, for 16 years, my wife Judy and I have been raising our beautiful daughter Claire, who will finish school this year. The neighborhood where we lived was relatively safe, and the school was close by. I tried to ensure maximum comfort for my family, even though we never indulged in luxuries. But I always had the belief that family is one of the main priorities, and it is instilled in every member of the family. My wife came from a modest family, and I liked that because the kindness and dissent, they were her main virtues when I married her. But with our daughter, as she reached adolescence, sometimes it became more difficult, since he fell under the influence of more corrupt classmates and friends. However, she still listened to me and tried not to make me doubt her. One afternoon, when I came back from work, noticed that Judy seemed worried about something. I approached her, sat down next to her, and asked her what had happened. "It looks like Claire has a boyfriend," she replied. When I said it, I understood what was happening, although I didn't see the Armand in it all. "Judy, dear, he's old enough now. It's normal for her age to start a relationship with a guy. Claire is a smart girl. We raised her ourselves. I'm sure he won't do anything silly," I replied. "Yes, but I found out that he is older than her. Quite old. Is that normal? He hasn't even finished school." I honestly didn't expect it, thinking that Claire had started dating a classmate. But Judy herself was younger than me by 4 years, although we started dating long after she finished her studies. For me, the main concern was that our daughter was a minor, and someone significantly older was not at all suitable for dating her. But if she simply forbade him, he would probably do the opposite with his school sweetheart. So I decided to wait a bit in the hope that Claire would notice that he wasn't right for her. "You want to know more about the guy my daughter liked? He told you. Have you seen him?" I asked my wife. "No." Judy sighed sadly. "I just saw her texting a young man. You can tell by the picture that they're not even in high school anymore. Raymond, I'm worried about her." "Well, do you want to talk to her?" I told him worried. But Judy shook her head, saying that Claire would probably be more open with her. as a woman and a mother, than with me. I agreed with my wife, in the hope that he could gather information, and also to impart some knowledge about the first steps in adult life to our daughter. Claire came home a little later than usual, and his mood indicated that he had had a lot of fun. Judy immediately went to her room, and I was hoping he would bring me good news from there. However, after a while, all I could hear were screams coming from our daughter's room. Claire was extremely upset for the actions of his mother and accused her of meddling in his personal life, saying that I had no right when reading someone else's messages. Judy returned in a distressed state. I didn't rush the situation and wait for her to tell me what had happened. Offered him a glass of water as he sat at the table, holding his heart with one hand. This may be happening, he wondered. I put so much effort into it, and she treats me like this. I took her hand, wanting to hug her, but Judy somehow got away from me. At that moment, I heard our daughter coming down, and then he poked his head out in the kitchen, where we were. I'm staying at Samantha's tonight. Don't wait for me for dinner, he said in a disappointed voice, and without waiting for our response, he headed toward the exit. I understood my daughter's feelings, because his mother did not act in a completely fair to her. His letters should not have gone to him, and if he did, he should at least to have remained silent about it. But what I have done, I have made to be, and nothing can be undone. I knew my daughter's character, and I knew she wouldn't stay mad for long. He needed time to calm down, and then I intended to talk to her myself. The next day, I took time to calm down, and then I intended to talk to her myself. The next day, I took the day off from work. Wanted to get home earlier. Around the time that Claire, he usually came back from school, Judy was already in the middle of baking her cakes, in a pleasant aroma that would have the appetite. It was spreading all over the house. When Claire arrived, I managed to have a conversation with her. We sat together in her room for about an hour, where I first listened to her understandingly. Then I gave him some tips, and I asked him not to hide anything from us. Claire promised me that she hadn't done anything to make me blush. He also said that in a few days he will bring Tom, so that we can get to know him. Satisfied with my daughter's answers, I went back to my wife and told her to get ready to receive the guests. I was anxious to meet the young man that my daughter had chosen for herself. A few days later, Claire didn't come home alone, as promised. It was a day off, and I had met him in the park before I brought him home. Honestly, I felt a little confused when I found out that this guy, he was just over 30 years old, although he looked quite young and even attractive. During lunch, Tom told us a little bit about him, and we asked him questions in return. I could tell that during the time that Tom was with us. He and Claire seemed to be a pretty happy couple, and Tom practically wouldn't let go of his hand. Judy barely contained her nerves with the guest, but occasionally his anxiety would show, and when they left, I sat down next to her, and I asked him about his feelings. How am I going to feel something different? He regretted. Haven't you seen him? Is he too old for her? I understood your concerns, and I knew how this could all end. But my daughter had given me her word, and I believed him. I knew that if I gave him something, I would probably do the opposite, like all children his age. But the time passed, and my worries soon dissipated. My daughter kept seeing Tom, and sometimes he would come to visit us, or rather to her, to not worry and dispel any doubts. He wouldn't even close the door to his room when they were there. The only thing I did without telling my daughter, it was in the early days, when Tom started coming home. I approached him when no one could hear us, and I expressed my sincere thought to him. Tom, I see you're a good boy, and my daughter likes you. I hope you feel the same way about her. I told her, but I understand life, and there's no guarantee they'll still be together. But as long as they're together, if you somehow hurt her, I'm going to drag you to the fowls. I hope we understand each other. Tom made no secret that he found my speech threatening, but he still nodded in response, and I was hoping that he would behave wisely with Claire. It's been several months, ever since we met Tom. Claire seemed quite happy. My wife and I were just worrying that those appointments would not affect his grades. But our daughter did not disappoint us, and now she was getting ready for the prom. However, I couldn't help but notice how my wife had changed lately. Judy was trying to hide her discomfort, but I noticed that sometimes he behaved quite nervously, and she seemed worried about something. Several times, I tried to start a conversation with her about it, but he was always coming up with new excuses, saying she was still worried about our daughter, and that now I needed to help her get ready for graduation. His answers were completely logical and explanatory, but something inside of me was telling me that he wasn't telling me something. I didn't want to doubt my wife, and I couldn't imagine what secrets she might have. So I tried to push away any negative thoughts, especially because at that time, I needed to pay more attention to my daughter so that he would understand that as family, I would support her in any decision. A few days before the dance, Judy went out shopping with her daughter. They needed to find a suitable dress. I stayed at home busy with notes. Unexpectedly, the ink in my pen ran out. I remembered I had more in the drawer. No matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find any pen. So I decided to check my wife's drawer. Among the clutter that filled the drawer, I found a pen. When you pick it up, ready to close the drawer, my gaze fell on a small box of pills. In the far corner, I took her out and found birth control pills. It seemed strange to me because Judy had never used them before, and he had always been careful, leaving everything as it was. I planned to talk to her about it later, but then Judy came back to Claire, and my thoughts were completely diverted from my daughter's new outfit and the plans for the festive evening. Shortly after came his appointment, and Judy invited everyone to the table. As dinner time approached, completely forget the pills. I didn't think about them again for a few days. On vacation, I decided to come back to you in Prano from work to support my daughter and help my wife in some way. Enter the house in a good mood, carrying a small box with a gift for Claire. I chose a necklace with an angel-shaped pendant as a talisman to protect his soul. When I saw Tom's car parked outside, I realized that he was already here, but the house was quiet, and when passing through the rooms, not via anyone. So I headed towards my daughter's room, hoping to find her and Toma there. But Claire's room was empty. It seemed strange to be playing Leskindite like that, but I knew there had to be a reasonable explanation, and they had to be here somewhere. Leaving the box on my daughter's bedside table, I went to my room to change and freshen up after work. However, upon entering, I heard a commotion in the bathroom. I thought it was Judy, and I decided to come in to greet her. But when you open the door, I immediately regretted, and she thinks she got home early. Tom was close to her, holding her by the waist and kissing her. As I was leaving, they both turned around abruptly. I was speechless at that moment. I never thought I'd catch my wife cheating on me, especially with our daughter's boyfriend. Instantly, I felt emptiness and disappointment. What I saw paralyzed me momentarily. I couldn't even move my lips, and those two didn't even blush with shame. Tom took a step back, fixing his pants, and Judy quickly jumped to the ground, and he tried to explain things to me. Raymond, listen to me. I'm going to explain everything to you. It's not what you think. It's just, I stutter. At that time, I came to my senses full of going for how he treated me, not just to me, but also to our daughter. Tom smiling guiltily. He tried to get closer to the door, but my fist stopped him abruptly, and he backed up screaming in pain. What's the matter with you? He asked. I have nothing to do with this. This family is crazy. I didn't know what he meant, but I didn't think to stop and took a step towards him. However, Judy clung to me, preventing me from hitting the boy again. Let go of me, I screamed, pushing the content of force, who tripped and hit his back against the sink. I was throwing myself at Tom again, and he covered himself with his arms to avoid the blow, but he was still trying to defend himself. It was too crowded to fight in the bathroom, so I pushed him into the room by the collar. Judy kept going round and round us, and begging me to stop all this, but I couldn't stop. My anger completely took over me, and I kept hitting Tom until he collapsed on the floor, exhausted. At that time, we heard the daughter come into the house downstairs, calling Judy and Tom. Man, get out of my house, and I don't want to see you near my daughter anymore. I made Tom and started pushing him toward the door. Claire screamed in horror at the sight of Tom's purple face, and now I had to explain to him why it had happened, but I didn't know what words to use, that they wouldn't hurt my daughter too much. Tom, what happened? Dad. First she ran to him, and then she asked me, but I kept pushing him toward the front door, ignoring my daughter's screams for now. And when Tom stood on the threshold, on the little concrete path after my push, I closed the door behind him, and I turned to the two frightened women. Claire kept throwing questions at me, about why I was behaving like this, and why he had beaten Tom. Judy just stood there, silently wiping away the tears, which occasionally trickled down her cheeks. What the hell happened? Claire got in my way by grabbing my arm. What did Tom do to you? Why did you do that? Today, it is migration. You better ask your mom about that. You respond dryly and let go of his hand. I wanted to beat the woman who had betrayed me, but I couldn't do it in front of my daughter. So I just walked away, so as not to lose control and make things worse. Claire looked at me, then at her mother, then to me again, until I disappeared into the other room. She could still hear her daughter asking her mother questions, but I couldn't give them answers for a while. I felt so hurt and lonely. I was feeling depressed and broken. In addition, this unpleasant situation, it happened on the day Claire had been waiting for and prepared with so much anello. Now his celebration was ruined. I wish I could turn back time, but I couldn't. Now I was just hoping my daughter would understand, so he could get over the first disappointment of his life. Leaving my wife and daughter, I went to the living room. I felt the need for a drink, because the wound in my soul hurt me terribly. I poured myself a glass and sat down in an armchair, but it didn't make me feel more comfortable. I could hear Claire's screams and Judy's silent shame that he was hesitant to answer his daughter and tell her the truth. A few minutes later, my daughter came into the room where I was, and he sat down in front of me. Dad, I explained, change it. What happened here? It's like I'm in a place that's not my home. What did Tom do? My daughter asked me. I sighed deeply and put the glass on the table. I searched my mind for the right words, but my thoughts were all scrambled, and now there was nothing but confusion. Looking at my daughter, I reached out my hand and took hers. Daughter, Tom is not worth it. I believe me, I started. But why? My daughter still didn't understand. Just believe me, it hurts me to tell you what. But today I found out that I didn't have only you. I'm sorry, but what? Claire interrupted. How can you say that? Tom loves me, he told me. He swore it. No, I don't believe you. He let go of her hand. You're lying. You and Mom just can't stand that he's older than me. That's why they decided. But to beat him for that. Claire got up and started to leave. Where are you going? Ask. I'm going to go get Tom. I do not know what happened here, but he will definitely explain everything to me. He snorted and headed for the door. Leg right again, telling her not to leave and that it wasn't worth. But he wasn't listening to me anymore. It seemed that this idiot had taken over her heart, and now he was more important than his family. I wanted to stop her, but she was already outside the door, and I knew it wouldn't do any good. When my daughter went to look for Tom, Judy came in and sat down on the sofa with a bitter face. Well, do you see what you've achieved? Are you a society girl? I was about to explode. I'm sorry, Raymond, but I had to do it. He started, but I found his speech so blatant and disgusting that I even stood up next to her, ready to slap her. You saw what? I can't believe it. Did you see what to spend a night with that stupid? In our house. Yes, Raymond, I understand your feelings. I grabbed her by the arm and pulled her up, but somehow I couldn't hit her, even though I tried. I pushed her again, and she collapsed back on the couch. Bitch, I just wanted you to leave her daughter alone. This was going to happen sooner or later. He just didn't want Claire to fall too much in love with him. I'm talking fast. It was the stupidest thing I had ever heard in my life. I couldn't believe it was real, and it was happening to me. But it was real, and I didn't know how to live with it. I only understood one thing at that moment, that I couldn't stay with this woman under the same roof. At least not yet. I wanted to leave everything and go away. But there was still my daughter, that she would still be convinced of the bitter truth. And then he would need my support. I stayed at home and waited for my daughter to come back. I called her several times, but she didn't answer. I had a terrible thought. Tom had confessed everything to her. And now she, with a broken heart, I could be in some kind of trouble. Why else would he not answer my calls? I should have found her in fast. Activating the device search on my phone, I tried to calculate the location of my daughter. Luckily, the GPS on his phone was turned on, and soon as Pedden was. While I was doing this, Judy tried to talk to me, and he kept apologizing, but I didn't care anymore, and all I did was push her every time she came near me. Soon he was on his way in the car, to the place that the dot on the screen indicated to me. The location was by the water. I had to wander the alleys for a while, before finding Claire sitting on the farthest bench. almost under the bridge. I was there crying, all alone. Claire. I was running towards her as soon as I saw her. She looked at me with eyes full of the ugrimas, and he cried even louder. I immediately hugged her and tried to comfort her. Daughter Street, everything's going to be okay. I caressed his back as he rested his face against my chest. I could hear every sob, as if I felt in my body, and that only made it hurt more. He hadn't told me anything yet, but I realized that I had had a rather unpleasant conversation with that idiot Tom that had ruined our family's happiness and peace. Watching my daughter's suffering, I realized with every passing second that I wanted to get back at that stupid guy. Because of him, now 2 hearts were hurt. He had broken my daughter's heart, and because of him, Judy had broken mine, and I wasn't going to let it go. But first I had to take my daughter home. But I don't want to go there, he protested. She's there. I can't stand to see her anymore. How could he? I hate her. Claire cried again. I understood her feelings and her pain. So I thought for a moment, and I decided to call my friend that he was away for work temporarily, leaving his house empty since he lived alone. I was really hoping he wouldn't reject me, and that my daughter and I could stay there for a while. Joe listened to me, even if I don't go into details, and after a few nice phrases, he explained to me where the spare key of the house was. Claire was relieved that she didn't have to meet with the traitor mother and followed me. Once there, I mentioned that I needed to come home. Claire was relieved that she didn't have to meet with the traitor mother and followed me. Once there, I mentioned that I needed to return home, and my daughter asked me to bring some of her things. Listen, daughter, I understand how sad you are now. I just wanted to ask you, you're going to the dance. She's quite prepared for that. The dance asked sadly, what the hell is the point of going now? I don't even have here in Cary. We'll take my appointment for the event. And now there was a hint of hate in his last words. Even so, I decided to bring her the dress and the gift that he had failed to deliver him. After I settled my daughter in one of my friend's rooms, when she curled up in bed, I went home. It was repulsive to return there, but I couldn't give up everything for Judy's idiotic actions. And when I arrived, another surprise was waiting for me at home. I found my wife in the bedroom, packing some of his stuff in a suitcase. At the beginning, I thought he had decided to leave me and go to live with Tom, but to assume something and to know for sure. They were 2 different things, so I decided to ask him to dispel all doubts. No, rhyme on. I'm not leaving for him. I just understand how much it hurts you. And our daughter. I don't want to be in your way. I know they both hate me, and I have decided to live separately. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. Judy, you're right. You hurt us a lot. And where are you going? I don't know for sure yet. He sat down on the bed. I'm staying with a friend. I've already fixed it. Later, maybe I return to my hometown if you won't forgive me. Oh, rhyme on. He got up and came over to me. How else can I explain to you that I did it all for our daughter? I still love you and her. She touched my cheek with the palm of her hand, but immediately to human gaze, and I pushed her away. Forgive you? For something like that? Could you do it? I answered dryly. Judy hung her head sadly. I left her in the room, and I went to pick up some things. In Claire's room, when I had already packed a small bag, I approached the bedside table. The gift box was still intact. I hid it in my pocket and headed towards the exit. Although Judy had decided to leave, I couldn't stay there, especially in her bedroom. Everything reminded me of betrayal. I left the house before Judy, and soon I returned to my friend's house. Upon entering the room, where I had left my daughter, I saw that she had fallen asleep. Carefully placing the bag on a chair so as not to wake her up, I went to the bed and put the box next to my daughter. I wanted at least something to be pleasant for her on this day. Now, I had the intention of finding Tom and talk to him again, not just with words, of course, but that seemed insufficient to me. And now I was tormented by the thought that this idiot had not got into with a young girl for nothing. I believed that love had no age limits, but this situation seemed different. If I really loved Claire, I would have started an affair with my wife too. I had another friend who worked as a detective. He was not in our city at that time, but he had his contacts. So I called him and told him about the problem, that I was worried. Dylan, that was the detective's name. He listened to everything and promised to look up something about the guy. I knew it was a delicate thread, and the odds of finding something with promising about Tom were low, but there was still hope. While waiting for the results, I started looking for Tom. For a little over an hour, I had been driving through the city, checking every place Tom might be, but so far he had not been successful. I even went to his house, but it was empty, so I decided to visit the school. Somehow, it seemed to me that he might be looking for some other young girl, but Claire. Upon arrival at the school, noticed a small group of guys in the public garden. By slowing down, I took a closer look and saw that the one I was looking for. I was among them. Tom had fun with them, drinking beer like nothing happened. I was about to approach him and confront him on the spot without even looking at his friends. But just at that moment, the phone rang. It was Dylan. I was surprised that Tom could turn out some kind of scammer, or at least just a pimp, and that he might now be imprisoned, in addition to everything else. Unfortunately, Dylan didn't give me any good news. Tom was completely clean, and I was starting to feel hopeless, and I just wanted to punch him in the face. But Dylan, before he hung up, he said something to me. He told me that Tom could be charged of having spent the night with an underage girl, but that would only help if he and Claire, they had been intimate, and my daughter hadn't told me anything about it, and she was taking her time. Now there was only one thing left to do, and at this point, he was so angry that he was ready to fight even with the whole crowd. I got out of the car and headed towards them, but to my surprise, Tom didn't do anything heroic to look good in front of his friends. When he saw me, he ran like a pathetic coward. Without wasting a second, I chased him. I had to run all the way through the square, then through some alleys, and jump a couple of fences. By the end, I was starting to realize that my health wasn't the same as before, and I was feeling tired and with a tingling in the side. For a moment, I even thought I might lose it, but I was helped by the dead end, the one we were in, and now I could kick his ass for forcing me to run so much. Tom stopped against an empty wall, and he turned to me. He had his hands up, the clenched fists, ready to fight, but I could clearly see the fear in her eyes. I didn't even understand, because I was so scared, because he didn't look so fragile. However, he took a few steps towards him, and I looked at him furiously. He took a stick near him, and he grabbed it like it was a lifeline. But I was not afraid, as bait and angry, that the stick looked like a twig to me, and attack him like a beast. We struggled for a while. I managed to hit him in the idol a couple of times, and he tried to stand, and he yelled all kinds of cruel things at me, even about Judy and her daughter, trying to hurt me. But he didn't realize that. It just made me angrier, so I hit him harder. The only thing that stopped me, it was the horn of a police car. Apparently, the police officer saw the race and decided to investigate. Tom started yelling at the cop who came out, saying that I was a crazy maniac and that he had attacked him for no reason. But I didn't expect the policeman. He was an acquaintance of mine. I went up to the policeman and talked to him for a while, after which Tom was arrested, walking to the car with his hands twisted behind his back and handcuffed. He was just looking at me angrily, realizing that in that situation, he couldn't beat me. I went back to my daughter and I wanted to talk to her. I had intended to tell you what had happened to Tom and me, and I was hoping he would understand. Although looking at my watch, I figured I could have gone by now, to the party after all. But when I entered, Claire was there. She was no longer asleep, but he was walking anxiously about the house. Dad, he ran to me when he saw me. Honey, what's wrong with you? I called you several times. I searched in my pockets to see why my phone wasn't working. And when I didn't find it, I realized that I had lost him somewhere while I was chasing that idiot. But the phone was the least of it at the time. I sat next to my daughter, and I decided to have a serious talk with her. First, I found out that I hated Tom at that time, and I told him that there was a way to punish him legally. But to do it, I would have to testify in court that he had forced her into indecency. I was hoping that my daughter would accept this little lie, just to get back at the man, that he had hurt her. However, Claire surprised me a little when she told me that she and Tom, they had already been intimate, but he apologized to me for not having fulfilled his promise, and he swore that they had used protection. Hearing this from my daughter, you didn't know whether to be happy or sad, but I decided to take advantage of the situation. I told my daughter that I was nothing, angry with her, and hugged her. Then I called the policeman friend, that he had arrested Tom. and I told him I wanted to press charges against him. The situation turned out to be favorable for me. The prosecutor had done his job well, and Tom was given a few years. So I guess after that, I wouldn't be looking at schoolgirls. My daughter and I went home. She was under stress for quite a while, but my care helped her get back to normal. Being away from her mom also helped. I finally divorced Judy. After a while, when Claire had already calmed down, he could see his mother, but there was no place in my heart for Judy anymore. What do you think about our stories today? In my opinion, these stories are very interesting and pleasant to listen to because you need to think less about past events. What is your opinion? Write in the comments. Subscribe to not miss more videos like this. And remember, history is a chance to become a better person, and see you soon.